This morning I chose to talk about imagination and how important it is to us. Some of you that have studied Unity teachings for many years know that it's one of those 12 powers that were identified, imagination. And it's something that gets more and more press as time goes on, written in different ways. But, for all of human history, people have really known how powerful visualization is. Holding that in your mind, in your heart, feeling it, as Charles Fillmore said, bringing your truth to you. He said it a little differently than they say now, the law of attraction, bringing us to our good. He said to visualize and allow your love to bring your good to you. And Victor Hugo is the one that said, greater than the tread of mighty armies is an idea whose time has come. Okay? So whether we are using our imagination to pray for ourselves or the world, or to pray for ourselves and the world, let's remember that, okay? An idea whose time has come. That idea cannot be stopped. It may look like it, but it can't. And Stuart Wilde said, in the end, it all comes down to enthusiasm. Your creativity is basically your expression of God force. We haven't always looked upon creativity and dreamers the way we should. I know when I grew up, a lot of times people would say, oh, they're just dreaming their lives away, and maybe we can do that too much too. We also need to remember to take that first step, don't we? That vital first step, and not just sit around dreaming. And then Jesus said, even greater things shall you do than I. That's powerful. He did some great things. Those are really important words. And the Sufi poet Hafiz once said, I should not make any promises, but I know that if you pray, somewhere in the world, something good will happen. Wow. How powerful is that? So maybe praying and imagination are related. Our prayers can be a dream, can't they? Dreaming of something better, that's a prayer too. Is it just my imagination, or has life gotten too serious? I think of my friend Roger, who might say, lighten up and dance, baby, dance. Is that something you'd say, Roger?
Only 4 times.
Only 4 times today, okay. I thought that was so sweet. When I saw that, I just couldn't resist. Maybe we just need to lighten up and dance, baby, dance. And I was thinking about that too, that we have received some miracles in the world. I know that how tense and critical things seemed when we would get news that a loved one had contracted COVID, and we'd just all panic, and then, and we don't need to do that anymore, because that virus is going to get weaker and weaker all the time, and it already is. It already is. I know that we received word that a friend in an assisted living facility had been exposed to and gotten COVID this week. And so what I did was to just reach out to people that I thought might have seen her at some point. No panic, just some information, so that we might know. And so this is the good news. This is good news from 2 years ago or even a year ago, okay? So let's celebrate that and feel good about it. So let's dance, lighten up, and dance, baby, dance. Okay. That's good, Roman. I like those moves. Is it just my imagination running away with me? Does anybody remember that 1970s hit by the Temptations? You remember it? Yes, of course we do. Yeah. Yes, of course. And we all know that in the song, and I was sort of going over the lyrics the other day, and at first he's talking about this girl that in his dreams he would love to be with her, you know. And then in the end, it seems to me that the lyrics turn around to the fact that she is his, this dream girl that he only dreamed about. And I think that that's the way our imagination can work for us, and we know that our imagination works for good or bad, doesn't it? How many experiences have you had with allowing your imagination to run away from you? And the next thing you know, you were thinking all kinds of worst case scenarios. Anybody ever done that, Sherry? No? My daughter Sherry says she's a worst case scenario thinker, but she pulls herself out of it pretty quickly. She gets herself prepared that way. But we all know that, and the thing is, just don't stay in that place. If you've imagined a worst case scenario, get into the practice of pulling yourself out of it. My blood type is B positive. I'm serious. My blood type is B positive. In actuality. And I think in reality that is the best way to be, is to be positive. Whatever your blood type is, take a look at it. And if it's negative, see how you might turn that around, okay? Okay. So we can use our imagination to create or to tear down, can't we? When you're negative, that's what you're doing. You're tearing things down. Get yourself out of that state of mind. Move away from it. Sometimes we argue for limitations. We just look for them. Richard Bach in his book Illusions says, argue for your limitations and they are yours. You own them. You've got them. And that's the truth. We all know it. We all know it. We've seen proof of that. There's a well-known story, and I'm sure some of you know it as well as I do, of a woman who was in her 60s, and she had been a famous ballerina and ballet instructor. And she all of a sudden had a crippling form of arthritis that came upon her. And all the predictions said that she would be totally crippled as she moved into the decades ahead of her if she made it through those. And she proved everyone wrong. She decided she was not going to allow her body to become inflexible. So she continued doing all the moves she'd ever learned, and she kept her body flexible, bending, moving continually. She's now in her 90s, and she's still teaching and performing ballet. It is possible. We know that people are living longer now, and they're healthier than they ever were. I know I've told the story of my husband's grandmother that couldn't even make it up the steep stairway when she was in her 60s because she had told herself she couldn't. And then his mother in her 80s was very proud because she still could. But that's what's happening with us if we will allow it, is that we are healthier because we've learned to eat healthier and to stay flexible in body and mind. And if you're not doing things to keep your body flexible, I would encourage you to do that, because that's what will keep you young in body and spirit. Be as flexible as you can be. I know Beth teaches a form of yoga and breath and balance, coming back to equilibrium. And if you've never attended it, it's on Zoom once a month. I encourage you to do that when she comes back from her little mini vacation, not a vacation over to Texas, is it? She's going to work more than ever, but I encourage you to do that. And stretch your body and your mind. Stretch both of those. Allow yourself to dream. Do all of you have a practice of dreaming? Do you just allow your dreams to go wild, go wherever you want them to be, to go? I do. And a lot of times during the day, if I have the time, I just go into the quiet, and you might call it meditation if you want. But in the silence, I allow my mind to wander. And I allow myself to, if I've been drawn to something in the past that I don't want to have happened or wish I hadn't, I just go back to that book and imagine it as a book, rip that page out and throw it away. I encourage you to do that, each and every one of you. Now be mindful that we can't change the future for anyone else but ourselves, but we can go back to the past and we can rip that out and toss it out just that easily. We can. And while we're in that state of ripping those pages out that we didn't want from the past, go on and dream about the future. Dream about it. Allow yourself to dream. See yourself down that path of healing. And go to the future and come back if you need to. But allow yourself to dream. That's how everything has been created. Did you know that? Did you know that? The Disneys of the world, the Wright brothers, those Kitty Hawk moments, let's call it that, if you would. Those Kitty Hawk moments where if they had not happened, imagine that. That flight that actually took place, and I don't know, I didn't look it up, but however many feet it was not as wide as the wingspan of a modern Boeing 747. Did you know that? But it was that mindset, that imagination that allowed that to happen. And if it had not happened, we wouldn't have flight today. Aren't we glad of that? And aren't we glad of the Harry Potters? Who follows Harry Potter? I know Sherry and Shelby do, and LJ and Tina and Susan, and oh yes, all of you good, wise people. And anyone that's been to Universal, I went to Universal with Sherry and Shelby in April, or March or April of this year, and we just had a fantastic time. It was wonderful. And riding that train, oh, how fascinating was that. But don't you see, that's how our imagination is. And now in psychotherapy, I understand that they even use some of the teachings from Harry Potter when he would want to distance himself away from some of the mean people or the mean-spirited people. And they can use some of that same distancing in people with PTSD and teaching them to use their imagination to distance themselves from these thoughts. Now, you know how it is with your imagination too, and our senses. I know for me, I had a bar of soap that came from Ireland the other day, and I took a smell of it. It was lavender. And for a moment, I was in a field of lavender. Does that ever happen to you? That's our imagination. I know our friend Janet provides and sells essential oils. And sometimes if I want to be transported someplace else, and maybe I'm a little dizzy and easily transported, I don't know, easier than others, I can take one of those little oils she has given me or I have purchased and take the cap off and just sniff it, and I can be transported someplace else. Another country, a galaxy. Is that amazing? And we know that from a sound or something that can happen that reminds us of something from the past, good or bad. That's our imagination too. That's a gift that was given to us by God, our imagination. And I'm looking at Sean knowing that any time she wants to see Romeo, her little guy that's gone to the beyond, she can think of him, and he's there. And she now has Juliet to share her space with her. And I'll just guarantee that little Juliet has moments where she's looking off into the beyond and she sees her brother Romeo winking at her. I know that. So our imagination allows us to bring in, to be creative. We were given these tools, this creativity, this enthusiasm, this momentum, motivation, zeal, inspiration, whatever it is that you're feeling. Allow yourself to dream. Allow yourself to go with that God force, that God-given light. and dream of a better world. Whose time has come, just beyond our sight, but it's on the way. And if you have an idea that hasn't come to fruition, I would invite you to go within and reimagine it a bit and allow it to go up into the ethers and say, God, I've tried this. I thought it was for me. It hasn't come yet. Perhaps there's a different form for that. Perhaps someone else is ready to hand me a gift. Maybe they're going to be the miracle worker here. And allow your mind to wander and see that good and that abundance and know that it is indeed on its way. What outcome would you see for yourself or others in certain situations? And instead of sitting around worrying about it, give it to God. And you use your power of imagination to see and feel that outcome. And in the end, it all comes down to enthusiasm, your creativity, which is a gift from God, is your expression of the God force. Each and every one of us has a uniqueness about us, a creativity. And it may be your smile and your ability to make others feel inspired or joyful. And you may say, well, that's not creative, that's not a gift. Well, of course it is. You know it is. It's an important gift. And enthusiasm, I believe, is momentum. It gives momentum to your imagination, your goal. I asked Dan the other day why it is that when we're in an airplane or in an automobile and you've pressed on the accelerator and you're accelerating, why does it feel at that moment as if you're going so much faster than once you do come up to speed? And he said, of course, it's those G-forces that are pushing on you. Is that what you told me, Dan? And the rest of you probably know that. But I've always thought about that and how interesting it feels as you're accelerating. And you've just got a lot more force on you at that point. And in life, it's the same way. Because maybe we're being tested if we're wanting to strike out and do something different. I wrote a little blog post the other day that Bobby posted for me, and thank you, Bobby, that I talked about a woman I knew many, many years ago, and I remember she told me that she felt like she was in a rowboat going down a river, and on this side of her, she had her family of origin pulling her by a rope that was attached to the front of her boat. And on this side, she had her husband and family pulling her which direction they wanted her to go. And neither, of course, they didn't agree on whichever the way they wanted her. They wanted one thing from her, and they wanted another. And she was trying to gain her own equilibrium and balance and control and power over her own life. And I remember at the time I had just read a little book by Richard Bodie, First You Have to Row a Little Boat. And it was the sweetest little book, and I don't know if any of you have ever run across it, but he talked about that very thing in that book, so I gave her a copy, and I told her, I said, you are trying to gain responsibility for your life, but you haven't yet, and you will, because you're awake now, and you're going to cut those cords. Well, she did. She cut the cords of those that were controlling her life and wanted from her what they wanted. They each had an agenda. And she decided she needed to take her power back and create her own agenda. Well, what happened, she got scared because as she's cutting the cords, she realized that she didn't have any oars. She didn't have any paddles in her boat. But guess what? With fear that came and the anxiety that came with being responsible for herself, she created some paddles pretty quickly. Nothing like taking responsibility for yourself that will empower you to take your life, envision it. You will gain the motivation, momentum you need. Place a little enthusiasm on it. You know what? You got a miracle coming your way. So this morning, I'd just like to end with that. It comes down to enthusiasm and creativity. I would just allow you to dream and dance, baby dance. Thank you for your time.